Thank you very much to everyone for coming out to our learning event tonight on this run-up to Shavuot. Our speaker tonight, as you know, is Ruth Schapira. Ruth is a Jewish educator with training as a counselor and Musar facilitator. She facilitates educational experiences of personal impact using contemplative and creative methods. The goal is to connect you with sacred texts so that you might gain some insight and personal meaning, and through that, a more personal connection to our beautiful heritage. Ruth also writes a blog called Reclaiming Judaism, which is listed among the top 50 Jewish blogs on FeedSpot. Ruth is completing research for a doctorate in Jewish education. We're honored to have Ruth speak to us tonight and with us tonight about Megillat Ruth, finding the clues to the romantic relationship between Boaz and Ruth. Ruth, take it away.
Thank you, Helene. So first I want to say how fortuitous this was, because I didn't really pick the date, but when Rabbi Weiss said, well, how about if you go Tuesday, and I wasn't looking at the Hebrew calendar, I said, sure, Tuesday's fine, and this happens to be the yahrzeit of my father, Alfred Peltzman, may he rest in peace, and I would like to dedicate our learning to his memory. So thank you for that, Rabbi Weiss. So tonight we're going to, as I said, we're going to delve into the text, and we're going to, there are different ways of approaching the text. I'm going to be showing you some information on the screen. When I do that, we're all going to move over to the right. We won't see each other as we're seeing each other now, but I really want this to be an interactive experience. The beautiful thing about Jewish text is that it has meaning for us the more we bring our own selves into it. So there's so much richness in the text itself, and hopefully we'll all experience some of that. I know these sessions are set at 30 minutes. I'll try my best to go through what we can go through in that time, and if you need to leave after exactly 30 minutes, I'll understand, but we may go just a little bit over, not too much over, but we'll see how much we can get through. So first I would like to, if you could just unmute yourselves and just say one or two sentences, because we're not going to really have time for more, just one or two sentences. What is striking about the book of Ruth for you? What stands out for you? In just one or two sentences, that's all. And I may need to cut you off actually, because I'm really going to keep us to that one or two sentences. So yeah, Rabbi Weiss, yeah.
I love the book of Ruth. I won't go too much into it because I want to make sure there's enough time, but one of the things I find so powerful about the book of Ruth is that it's not a book of heroics. It's a book of everyday miracles. It's a book about interpersonal relationships that really foregrounds women, actually, and women who have a unique bond with each other, which is so different than pretty much all the rest of the Tanakh. There's that famous Bechdel test, the author Alison Bechdel, who says a movie or a film passes the test if there's more than, I think, 5 sentences of dialogue between two women that aren't about a man. And so the book of Ruth passes that test.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I can say a lot more, but I'll keep it at that.
Okay. Faye, you want to introduce your first name so we know who you are?
Faye Lavison, mother of Karen. I've always loved the book of Ruth because I've loved the relationship between Ruth and her mother-in-law. So often we hear of daughter-in-laws and mother-in-laws and, how they never get along. So happened I got along great with mine. And I've always enjoyed reading it and seeing the relationship. What a beautiful relationship they had.
Beautiful. Thank you. Someone else? You don't have to go.
So
Bill, hi.
Is that the book of Ruth is another example of the tenuous genealogy of the Davidic family, because this is the second time that the Davidic family hung by a string. The first time was back when Yehuda had an illicit relationship with his daughter-in-law. And so therefore you get Peretz at that time, And so now so that was the first tenuous relationship. And here we have the second tenuous relationship leading eventually to King David and the dynasty.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
I would like to just say that in addition to it being a beautiful story, I always remember a founding member of ours, of Bethel's, by the name of Phyllis Schwartz, who every Shavuot used to read in English to the congregation the Book of Ruth. And it was just magnificent. And those of you who've been here a while, probably, Phil, I see your head is shaking. Remember that?
Yeah,
So I always
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I was saying the very same thing.
Yeah.
And Charlotte says the same thing.
Mhm,
Someone
yeah.
couldn't hear. Is there anyone else who wants to share? Okay, Helene? Yeah.
I just want to say I find the Book of Ruth fascinating, and taking it into a modern context. Back then, there was no Tinder, there was no Match.com, but they got together anyway. And so I think that's fascinating to look at it, at what happened back then and compare it to today.
Yeah. Anyone
I
else?
like it. Oh, I'm Linda. I think one thing that I really like is it really shows life cycle. You start with death, a tragedy, but yet we overcome that and you end with birth. And I think that's sort of an important thing, that just that whole life cycle to remember sometimes.
These are beautiful, rich comments. Wonderful. Karen? Yeah.
I think one of the neat things about the Book of Ruth, all stories, of course, most stories have morals, but there's so many values. It's a very value-rich story. You have, friendship and resilience and faith, and I think it's very, as how they relate to people and to relationships with people and with God. And I think it's a very, it's something that's I find very comforting in with those values. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much, even just listening to some of these comments, there's so much in there. I'm going to move on unless someone else, would quickly want to share. I don't want to not have you have the opportunity.
To unmute.
Huh?
There are some more people who signed on who are muted.
Well, if they want to speak, you could, if someone wants to know how to unmute yourself, I can let you know. But we're going to start another portion of this and go ahead. Unless someone else, you could unmute yourself in the top right hand. If you put your cursor in the top right hand of your dark screen, there are 3 dots, ellipses. You just click on that and you can unmute yourself, I think. I hope. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Welcome everyone who just signed on, Judith and Brian, and everyone else who I can't see, but I trust you're all here. And I'm going to share my screen so that we can kind of dive into this. Okay. Let me just put on the view here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So let's just first go through the blessing that we say when we occupy ourselves with this wonderful opportunity of learning. Can you all see it appropriately? You could say it in Hebrew or in English. We can say it to ourselves, like on your own. We could start now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. And
Amen.
how fortunate and wonderful that in these times that are very challenging for us as individuals, we could come together as a community and learn together. I think it's a wonderful gift, and we thank God for the opportunity. So with all the richness in this Megillah, it's pretty amazing that it's the shortest book in the Tanakh at only 85 verses. It occurs, there's some dispute about this, but about the 10th century, before the Common Era, kind of between the time of the Judges and Samuel. And so this book really links that period with the Davidic line, as Phil referenced earlier. So this book makes sense for that. And it is the only place in the Tanakh where we have such extended dialogue between the characters. It's almost all dialogue. And it's about us. It's about people. It's about people who have challenges in life. And it's so relatable, as all of you said. And that's what makes the book so enduring and so amazing at the same time. So we are limited by time. Our focus is only going to be on the first 2 chapters. So, I mean, the theme of our learning is the romance between Boaz and Ruth. So not how it's realized or not at the town gate. The book is broken up into 4 chapters. One is the, beginning on the journey. The next chapter takes place in the field where Ruth and Boaz meet. The next is on the threshing floor where Ruth goes to Boaz, and the 4th is the resolution at the town gate. We're only focusing on the first 2 chapters and only on a few verses because of time. In this text, I'll let you read this, and then I'll just refer to it briefly. Can everybody see okay? You'll just let me know? Okay. So there are, the chapters that we are focusing on in Ruth really have her starting on her journey. And some people have said that it's very reminiscent of Abraham, and both because of her going on this journey, that she knows not where she goes, to a people that she's not really familiar with, and the chesed, the kindness that Ruth expresses, is the kindness that we learned from Abraham. So many have said that she's a female version of Abraham, along with, Rebecca, and displaying that kind of chesed. So that kind of gives us a place where we're gonna start. So it's very interesting. Everyone in this book is so iconic, and every name in this book means something. So Elimelech, who is Naomi's husband, they leave Bethlehem, the house of bread, because there was a famine. And they leave to go to Moab with their sons Machlon. Machlon means sick. You could think of the word choleh, right? He ends up dying. So we have a clue into his, nature from that. It also, exactly in modern Hebrew, it means from a window, mechalon, but machlon in the biblical sense means sick. And chilion, which means in Hebrew ruin and annihilation. So we're almost foretold what's going to be happening with this family. And ironically, they're leaving Bethlehem, a place which is defined by plenty, because there was a famine. And there's so much interpretation just on the beginning of this story about the fact that Elimelech left. It calls into, well, was there no faith in God? Was there no faith in that things would be fine in order for him to go to the land of Moab? Does anyone recall Moabite? What kind of associations do you have with the people of Moab? Anything?
Generally negative.
Negative. We're not supposed to mix with them.
Right. Negative. We were not supposed to mix with them. They were very cruel. When we left Egypt, they did not provide any water or drink. And then in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, it says that you shall not accept any Moabite into your community. Now, Devarim did not make a distinction between men or women, and so the scholars say, well, it just referred to men. You know, our sages say it just referred to men, but in Deuteronomy, it doesn't really say that. It says Moabite, any Moabite. So already we're seeing that this family is leaving Beit Lechem to go into a foreign land that was really not the ideal place to go. And misfortune hits them there. And their two sons who married Moabite women, again, not accepting anyone in the community, although according to the sages, Moabite women were different, they died. So two sons died, and the wives were childless, both Ruth and Orpah. So let me just go back. I'm sorry for jumping back and forth, but I do want us to see each other when we could see each other. Okay. So, you know, Kabbalists say that the gematria of Ruth's name, which equals 606, if you add the 7 Noahide laws, which everyone who is not Jewish is obligated to believe, well, that total is 613. So in her name is embedded the fact that she embodied all the mitzvot. So that's just like a little side footnote. And the name Boaz, the name itself means strong. I'm sorry?
Haven't heard your voices in a few days. Hope you are doing some fun kinds of things.
Is this someone talking on an answering machine? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Probably someone's answering machine. So Boaz means swift, strong, powerful, and he's approximately, according to the sages, 80 years old, which, you know, biblical times was, even though it sounds very old to us, was not necessarily that old, but he was significantly older than, you know, Ruth, who was supposedly 40. He's a judge, he's a leader in his community, and he's first introduced in the text as a man of substance, in Hebrew, Gibur Chayil, also meaning, it could mean wealth, and it also could mean heroic strength. So these names really give us a huge clue into the characters and to what's going to be happening with them in the rest of the story. Okay, so now we're going to be on to some character details. At some point, I'm going to be off the screen and go into the actual text in Sefaria, because we're going to be reading like line after line. I just edited some of these out. So does anyone want to read the English of the first verse? Anybody?
I'll read.
Okay, great.
They broke into weeping again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law farewell, but Ruth clung to her.
So in this verse, the Hebrew is dafka. Well, dafka is it's not a word that we find very often in our text. It's very strong. The first time that we see this word used is in Genesis, when we're told that Adam and Eve, as husband and wife, need to cleave. That is how it's defined most often, but the word is to cleave. In Hebrew, it comes from the same root word as dafka, l'dabek, and we are supposed to cleave to God. It's the same word that is used in Deuteronomy about our relationship to God. How does this word for you enrich your understanding of their relationship?
Seems like she really loved her.
Yeah.
She didn't want to leave. She didn't want to part from her,
Yeah.
even though she, you know.
And from what everyone knows of the story, Naomi tried to dissuade her. Naomi said, I'm not going to give you any sons. You can't go forward with me. In those days, if a woman was unmarried, the goal was to marry and have children. So there would be heirs. That was the goal. And Naomi could not provide that for her anymore. So this is really startling to see this kind of intense connection between a woman who's alone, Ruth, who's a widow, who has no known prospects right now, because what she would be doing is marrying one of Naomi's sons. Naomi's not going to have any more sons, so that's kind of the gist here. How about the next verse that gives us an idea of Ruth's character? Anybody?
I'll go on, Ruth. It's Karen.
Great.
But Ruth replied, do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God.
Okay. Any comments about this verse?
So,
You know, we think about Abraham following God and just believing in God and, following God. And here's the idea for the first time of somebody following somebody else. You know what I mean? And saying whatever is yours will be mine. It's a different idea.
Yeah, totally. And Ruth is so assertive. You look at how many ways she's really saying what she wants to do. Do not urge me to leave you. Do not urge me to turn back and not follow you. So these kind of, the textual, what the text is giving us is something in threes, right? Don't urge me to leave you. Don't ask me to turn back and not follow you. And then again, the next is wherever you will go, I will go. Where you will lodge, your people and your God. And then where you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. Even though these verses are split up, but they're in section of threes. And this is also reminiscent of Abraham, right? Go forth from the land, from your father's house, from all that you have known, to the land that I'm going to show you. And it's very powerful language. It's very short language, but in here we see a woman who is grieving, but is so strong and so assured about what she wants to do and where she wants to go. And hearing this, particularly on Shavuot, if we think about what our own connection is to our own heritage, God willing, we should have this kind of commitment. And it is really beautiful on Shavuot to think about us personally having this kind of commitment that this Moabite has for our faith and for our tradition and for our people. And it's really moving. It is really moving. Does anyone have any more comments about what we're seeing here? Yeah, Flo, hi.
Hi. So I think about her courage because, she was a stranger. I mean, we're talking about, again, the kindness about strangers, being a widow, Naomi and Ruth. And, they probably did not have money. They were poor. And so the fact that she had courage to leave a land that she knew and go to a strange land, okay, and that shows a lot.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's quickly go through Boaz, and here's where we see Ish Gibor Chayil. Can someone want to read? Someone who is not on mute, you could either unmute yourself or you could share? You could read either the Hebrew or English. Anybody?
Okay, now Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side, a man of substance of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Naomi, Madua li Isha Gibur Chayil, Mimishpachat Elimelech, Ushemo Boaz.
Thank you. So the first thing that we see about Boaz is what? This is when Boaz comes on the scene, and what do we know about Boaz right here?
From her husband's side of the family, a man.
Yeah. And then next, yes, husband side of the family, a man of substance. Okay, and let's do the next one, Judy, since you're on. Can you read the next one?
Presently, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem. He greeted the reapers. The Lord be with you. And they responded, the Lord bless you.
And what do we know about him from this? So this is the first time he's speaking.
We know that he's compassionate. He's greeting his reapers.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll expand on that a little bit.
He goes out into the fields to the people who are working his fields and greets them. I think this shows sensitivity and kindness that is beyond what one might anticipate.
Yeah, beautiful. So that's where we are now. We're gonna have to really jump through where I want to jump through now. Oh gosh, just give me a minute. And you'll tell me if you are going to see. I don't know why my screen is not coming up. Okay, sorry about the wait. Sorry about this. Okay, can everybody see here?
Yes.
Okay, so just a technical difficulty here. So here's the next thing. Okay, so the very next thing that Boaz says is, whose girl is that? That is not a derogative necessarily, but the fact that he's asking, the fact that he's asking though, the reapers means that she is taking wheat from among the reapers. So I'm not sure that all of us are aware, but at this time, the corners of the field were what were left for people to gather. So Ruth was not aware of some of those laws allowing, the poor to gather in the corners. She was right there with all the reapers. So we don't know really why he's asking, but it's very unusual to see a woman alone in that place, not at the corners of the field where everybody else is, but right there. And so he asks.
But Ruth, I believe that the law also is that if the reapers leave anything in the middle of the field, they are not supposed to go back to get it. And so therefore, she is within her right to be following them, because if they leave it behind, it's hers.
Good point.
And then of course one, also has to be concerned, it wasn't always safe for a single woman to be out in the fields alone. And so therefore, Boaz will also express concern about her. And as soon as he learns who she is, then it's even more so.
Right. We're not sure that she's aware of that, though. that, you know, that the reapers had to leave. That's just a question. Yes, it is a great point, but we don't know what she knew. She was a Moabite. So I don't know how versed she was, especially in Moab. It's not like she was in Bethlehem observing anything. So it's just an interesting point to think about. So,
Don't you
and thank you
think
for that.
Naomi on their journey back would have educated her?
Perhaps, yeah, all of these questions are outstanding. We don't know how long it took them. It, you know, it must have been a very difficult journey for two women to take, but we don't know, Judith. I think those are excellent questions, and that's what it allows us to engage with the text and makes the text so interesting, because so many of these things are there for us to think about and imagine. So the servant replies, she's a Moabite girl who came back with Naomi. And then she says, anyone want to read this?
Please let me glean and gather among
Thank
the
you.
sheaves behind the reapers. She has been on her feet ever since she came this morning. She has rested but little in the hut. Okay, so what would you make of Ruth's personality right here? The fact that she was gathering, you know, the sheaves behind the reapers again, and we said, and she's been on her feet ever since she came, and she's rested a little in the hut. Just a quick comment about her character.
She was a hard worker. The fact that she didn't rest very much, and she was going behind the reapers, and she's just been on her feet since the morning. She's working very hard. She's hardly taken a break.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that a bushel, I mean, it weighs so much that for a single woman to be doing this and gathering all of this was just beyond. So this is the first time now that we have a direct conversation. Juden, did you want to say something?
I think when I hear her saying this, I also think she's certainly seeking compassion. She's unsure of what the response is going to be, and her words are beseeching compassion.
Thank you. You know, I said Juden because that's how your name came up, but I didn't see you on screen. Judy, sorry. I would have said your name properly. So, so Boaz says to her what? So what is Boaz saying to her?
Stay here.
Oh, I wanted to highlight it. That didn't work. Yeah. So what did he?
Boaz said to Ruth, listen to me, daughter. Don't go to glean in another field. Don't go elsewhere, but stay here close to my girls. Vayomer Boaz el Ruth, hello, shamat biti, al telchi lilkot b'sadeh acher, v'gam lo ta'avuri mizeh, v'choch tid bakin im na'arotai.
Okay, what do you make of this? Mara, I see a smile. If do you want to share what you're thinking? You have to unmute yourself. I could unmute you. Go ahead.
I just think it's wonderful his concern for her.
Yeah.
He knows that she's family and he'll help take care of her.
Yeah. Also, I can't, what else? When he says, listen to me, daughter, make anything of that? Linda, I see a smile from you. I'm going to mute you. Well, wait, unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, he's very paternalistic.
Yeah.
And, you know, he at that time, he's really watching out for her. And
maybe likes it.
Yeah, that's about it. But I just smile because we know what happens later, and yeah.
We're only doing the first two. We're only doing up to this chapter, though.
I stopped my comments.
And then what does he tell her right away? Not only does he say, listen to me, my daughter, which could be a reference to age difference. It could be a reference to family. It could be a reference to
Sure.
taking care. And then what does he say right away?
He says, don't go elsewhere, but stay here close to my girls. You know, because he knows it's safe. And he sees this young woman who's by herself.
Yeah, beautiful.
Ruth.
So,
Ruth.
Yeah.
It's Karen. I just want to say I never realized that when he says stay close to my girls, he uses that same word of clinging, right? What's it say? Isn't that the same word? Like
Tibakin, right?
What's that? Tibakin, right? Which comes from the word for cling. It's interesting, just the.
Yes, it's beautiful. That's beautiful, Karen.
Yeah.
And he says, don't go in another field. I mean, stay here. So, as I said, this is a story about chesed. It's a story about characters that go beyond their, like what we would think would be a kindness, whether it's Ruth for Naomi or Boaz, to Ruth. He's just going beyond, and we're going to see that in this next sentence. Anyone else would like to read? Karen, you want to go for it?
Sure. Keep your eyes on the field. They are reaping, and follow them. I have ordered the men not to molest you. And when you are thirsty, go to the jars and drink some of the water that the men have drawn.
Okay, this is again incredibly above and beyond. So let's just imagine the words here. Nagiach is, shomer nagia, and is not touching. So when the word molest here is real serious, it's not just, it's what do you imagine was going on between the reapers and a single woman who was in the field, obviously unattached, maybe a foreigner, a Moabite. We don't even have to discuss it. It's our imaginations are probably enough. And he has ordered them not to touch her. Incredibly protective, and then going above and beyond. Not only that, and when you're thirsty, go to the jars and drink some of the waters that the men have drawn. Again, the jars were very heavy. We know this because when even, Rebecca was giving the camels water, it was also an act of such chesed, because these jugs of water are so incredibly large and heavy. And so let them draw for you. Ordering his men and his workers to do that. Again, going above and beyond is really beautiful. It's really just such a, just thinking of everything. Someone can say, well, you could, don't glean anywhere and stay after my reapers and then go about their business. But he takes care to give her specific instructions and to do a 360. Not only give her instructions, but give his workers instructions to make sure that she is protected, and then to think about her thirst, to even think about when she's thirsty, what's going to happen over there at the well. If he doesn't tell his men that to give her the water, what could happen? So he even predicts that part. It's I don't know. I was pretty impressed with him. So let's read how she responds. Anybody for this next? Let me see if I could just get this a little bit higher. Okay, anybody else? Come on, we're on a roll here.
You want Shelley? I can
Shelley.
do it.
Hi, Shelley. Absolutely.
She prostrated herself with her face to the ground and said to him, "Why are you so kind as to single me out when I am a foreigner?"
Okay. Any comments?
Well, I love the Hebrew, the matzati chen, that I
Yeah.
find favor, that we see this in many other stories. So it's not, there's this kindness thing I have found, you found favor in my eyes and you recognize me. I think it's very, very beautiful. It's
very beautiful
here as kind, but that's part of matzati chen.
Yeah, can you see my cursor on the screen? Okay, so this is what Florence is referring to. Matzati, I found, chen be'enayich.
Right.
Me,
right, and that you recognize me, that I'm somebody,
Right, and she's like, well, why? Like, what did I do to deserve? How come? She's so modest.
I think Ruth, with that question, it also shows that she may not realize whose field she ended up in. She may have just looked, this was for whatever reason chosen it, and it's almost like divine providence. She ended up in a relative's field because she's unaware of where she is, and it's an honest question.
Oh my God, yes. In fact, I'm gonna come back to this, but I'm gonna share this. Yeah, and that's exactly what you were talking about, Linda. This expression, she came and gleaned in a field behind the reapers, and as luck would have it, now, biblically, this is the term, vayiker mikra. So this is accidentally on purpose. This is a clue that this is God's hand. So accidentally on purpose, she came to Boaz. And how many of us have had those experiences that we say, wow, it was so weird. It was just, can you believe the coincidence? Can you believe that I got into there? Can you believe that this person called me? Can you believe I ran into this person? And we kind of say, yeah, it's just like coincidence. But biblically, it says that there's a hand behind what's happening. Karen?
There's a line that says, my rabbi used to say this growing up, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Sidney Greenberg.
Yeah. And, we don't necessarily see, divine providence, hashgacha prati, in everything that we are doing. And sometimes we just say, yeah, isn't that unbelievable? That's so weird. And this book makes us stop and focus on those times that it happens the way it's supposed to happen. And sometimes it's hard for us to accept that things happen the way they're supposed to happen because we're so much used to being in control of everything in our lives. But it is really beautiful. So Linda, I'm glad you brought that up because it's really a beautiful phrase, and it happens other times in our in our text that we see that. So let's go back. Okay, so we're almost at the time that we only have a couple more minutes. And does anybody want to continue with Boaz's reply?
I'd be glad to. Boaz said in reply, I have been told that of all that you did for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and the land of your birth and came to a people you had not known before.
Okay, so what goes around, he heard. He heard. Anyone else want to comment? But I think what we're going to do actually is move to these last two verses, or these last three verses, and we're going to read them quickly just so we can just end on this wonderful note of the dialogue between Boaz and Ruth. Anybody want to read this?
I'll read.
Great.
She answered, you are most kind, my lord, to comfort me and to speak gently to your maidservant, though I am not so much as one of your maidservants.
again, such, humility. The next one.
At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here and partake of the meal and dip your morsel in the vinegar." So she sat down beside the reapers. He handed her roasted grain and she ate her fill and had some left over.
Okay, vinegar is not what we think is vinegar. It's kind of a very sweet balsamic, because I really looked it up. I thought, oh, really, vinegar? And that's oh boy. But it's like a balsamic, sweet, delicious thing that they used to dip the bread in, and I'm sure into olive oil. That would make a pretty good meal. So what like strikes you about this, though?
Yeah, he's taking care of.
She's a lowly,
He's waiting upon her. He's waiting upon her. He's serving her.
Yes. Again, above and beyond, with modesty himself. He's a judge. He's a very powerful and wealthy man. I'm sure he has a lot of servants, because that's how he entered. He entered by saying to all of the workers in his field, may the Lord bless you. And of course, now we know where his blessings come from. And this really harks back to what the sages have said about Elimelech. And God teaches us through either bounty that we have or bounty that we don't have. And the fact that there was a famine and Elimelech left, and the fact that Boaz is full with the fields and the workers and is a man of chesed, doesn't escape the reader. And okay, these last two.
When she got up again to glean, Boaz gave orders to his workers. "You are not only to let her glean among the sheaves without interference, but you must also pull some stalks out of the heaps and leave them for her to glean, and not scold her."
She, who was probably starving by this point, she had some left over to bring to Naomi. So it was bountiful. It was just, there was a lot. Okay, so this is really, and then she gleaned in the fields until evening. She beat out what she had gleaned, which is a lot of hard work. I mean, this woman, I don't know how many hours she put into this, because when you beat out, you have to get rid of, separate the wheat and the chaff, and then the chaff, and then she beat out what she gleaned, and an ephah of barley is a huge amount. So that is the romance of two people. Well, you tell me, what did you share in the last couple minutes that we have, how this hit you?
I always thought that there was something so respectful of Boaz to let her do what she had to do, but with benefits. In other words, he could have just given her stuff. He could have just given her stuff and she didn't have to glean, right? But he wanted her to feel, I don't know if he wanted her to feel, but he knew that she had a role, right, and maintained that role. And I don't know, there's something neat about maintaining roles and yet showing chesed at this, just showing chesed above and beyond at the same time.
Wow, right.
I don't know if that made sense, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have to lose yourself.
Right. Didn't make her feel like a pauper.
Right.
He had respect for her.
Yeah.
Which is also a different kind of love and romance too, not just of looking at her and she's beautiful, but just observing people in a different way and let them be who they are.
It's interesting because there's not any time, and we do hear this in other ways about Esther and other characters about their beauty, but we don't hear about that about her.
But you know what, Ruth? I think you do, because you see there's a dignity in her that is truly an inner beauty. And then you see a dignity in him on how he took care of her, which is also an inner beauty. He didn't say, oh, I'm this wealthy man, I'm going to give you stuff. It preserved both of their roles, but in a way that allowed for their kindness to other people showed. Because here's Ruth working hard, not just for herself, but for her mother-in-law, and she doesn't gripe about it. And she doesn't say, I'm doing this for an old lady who needs food. And here he is willing to give up food for her, and maybe not just his food, but profit. And he does it in such a manner that everyone's dignity is maintained, which is really, I think, in its own way, a much deeper beauty.
That is really,
Well
really
said,
nice.
Very good.
Very nice. Any other closing thoughts that we have about these two? So thank you for sharing this time. I learned a lot. I think learning together, as I said, is a gift, and I thank you for the gift of your participation and your being here together. It's a wonderful Bethel community. I have to thank Rabbi Weiss and Helene Geiger, who is our adult ed chair, for really bringing these wonderful opportunities. I mean, there's an incredible amount of opportunities that we have here at Bethel to become community. And Florence today, led a meditation session, and that's also part of what we're doing. Florence leads it every Tuesday, and there's other sessions as well. And thank you so much. And Karen, thank you for also bringing all of your education to our families at Bethel.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for a fantastic session. It's always such a privilege to learn with you, Ruth, and really, really enjoy that fabulous, fabulous session. And it really gets us in the mood and the spirit for Shavuot. I want to thank everyone for coming to study together and all of your ideas. It's so many wonderful ideas in the mix tonight. And I want to just say that we have one more session in this series coming up tomorrow. Karen's going to teach us on contemporary idolatry. It's called Jewish American Idol. Tomorrow, same link, same time, so 8 p.m. Please come for a special session. It's going to be fantastic. And then, of course, Thursday night, we have Shavuot proper, where we'll have the community-wide Leil Tikkun from 6 to 8 through the Kihila, through the Bucks County Clergy Council. So again, I wanted to say Yesher Kochech, Ruth, fabulous session. And thank you, Helene. Thank you all. And good to see everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.